Now I'm going to make my way down the entire spine. I'm going to use the plus size therapy balls in the tote to do this. I'll start right at the top of the spine, in the neck, just below the skull, and we'll traverse all the way down each spinal segment. 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic vertebrae, 5 lumbar vertebrae, and then into the sacrum. Pausing at each segment with these balls, exploring all 3 planes of motion. So flexion, extension, side bend left, side bend right, rotation left, and rotation right. So let's meet on our backs and we'll start that technique. So let's meet on our backs with the plus size therapy balls or whichever tool you choose right at the base of the head. As you can see, my feet are off the edge of my yoga mat because as I progress along the spine, I will move upward. So I suggest you scoot down so that as you go, you make your way back up onto your mat. Take your therapy balls right in the neck, just below the base of the head. And we'll start out by exploring the flexion and extension by pelvic tilting, tipping the pelvis forward and then tipping the pelvis back, feeling how the head moves like a ripple in the spine. As I tip the tailbone down, my chin goes down. As I tuck my tailbone, my chin goes up. And I'll feel this gentle wave of flexion and extension along the whole spine here. And then I'll find stillness. I'm going to move the balls down so they're in the middle portion of my neck. And I'm going to continue. As I flex and extend, I get a gentle stripping or up and down massage of the middle segments of the neck. And I start to feel the interconnected nature of the spine. Then I find stillness. And I'm going to rock my knees side to side now. And as I rock my knees side to side, I feel a rotational wave all the way up my spine so that I get pressure on one side of the spine and then pressure on the other, creating a little gentle rotational mobilization at the segments the ball's resting at. I like to have my legs about as wide as the mat and my knees apart from one another when I do this gentle rotational action. And then reposition the ball with your hands, moving now down into the lower part of the neck. First, pelvic tilting to explore the flexion and extension. So you're going to bump up right against the first rib as you do this here now in the bottom segments of the neck. So from the pelvic tilting, you're mobilizing the spine from below. And as you feel at the base of your neck, right where the rib cage starts, like you're bumping into the first rib, Maybe you even try to mobilize from above, getting that flexion and extension by doing a gentle chin tuck. This can help eliminate some of that dowager neck, that dowager hump, that forward head posture by creating more space at that cervical thoracic junction. Try both ways, pelvis driving or head driving. And you can alternate between those two techniques, driving from above and driving from below as you explore down. Now see what happens right at the bottom of the cervical spine, right before it comes into the rib cage. What happens when you try to rotate through there? Palms may turn down to give a little stability. You may even rotate one way and find a point of sensation, a little trigger point, and pause and maintain pressure, deep pressure or sustained compression until it starts to resolve. And then I might walk myself up a little bit. So now I'm right at the top of the rib cage. So out of the neck now, right at the top border of the shoulder blades. Continue with flexion and extension. Using your pelvic tilt, or again, trying that chin tuck. This might be awfully hard and may take some practice to get used to. Be very gentle, staying behind the edge of pain. So staying in sensation that's tolerable, sustainable, where you can relax into it and take some deep breaths. And then again, rotate. Rotating from the bottom, feeling the ripple of rotation up the spine. As we get into the rib cage, a lot of rotation occurs here. So it's a great practice to free up that rotational action through the rib cage. And now you may even get into the third plane of motion, the side bend. What happens when you reach one arm down by your hip and then the other arm down? Just gently moving side to side, head staying relaxed. Getting a little side bend at each segment, traversing your way down, beginning again, now between the shoulder blades, moving through flexion and extension by driving from the pelvis, massaging in a stripping way over the spinal extensors, a couple segments at a time. Rotating. From the hips, and now maybe even rotating from the arms. If you cross your arms and give the shoulder blades a hug, what happens if you rock from ball to ball? Or you may not like the hug. You may even just use the arms swaying as a lever for rotation. And then again, exploring the side bending action. Taking a little creative freedom now as you traverse the spine, moving up one segment at a time. Noticing what it feels like in all 6 movements, so all 3 planes as you flex and extend, flatten as flexion, arch as extension. As you rotate from the hips, or from the shoulders, And as you reach side to side, feeling the side bend opening on one side, closing on the other, letting the head just stay resting on the floor, really heavy, just moving that space between the ball and the body. And then make your way down towards the bottom edge of the shoulder blades. Now you may even find that as you flex the spine, the head starts to lift. So here we can use the arms as a driver. So arch, press the elbows back towards the floor. Feel the extension and the opening in the front body. And then now tuck the tailbone. Use the elbows coming together to round through the upper part of the head. Arching the whole spine and then rounding the whole spine. Feeling how you roll over the balls and try not to pull from the hands. The hands are supporting the whole neck. They're creating a cup around the neck so that the head doesn't have to do any work. Neck's in line with the spine, arching, pressing the elbows back, pressing the tailbone back, and then tucking. As you tuck, you feel how the body wants to round. Exploring a couple segments, maybe pressing yourself up, so now you're just below the shoulder blades. It's more about mobilization. This isn't abdominal work here, although they engage a bit. This is more about keeping the musculature soft and easy and mobilizing the spine. And then again, see what happens as you explore the other planes of side bend and rotation. Feeling the spinal extensors, your rector spinae, all along the spine, being mobilized. Move the balls down now by moving yourself up or just taking the balls down with your hands to that lower thoracic spine underneath the shoulder blades. Arching and rounding. Breathing as you go. Now you're about the level of the diaphragm. So taking a few deep breaths here. Noticing what happens to your head. Maybe you need a little support for your head or to remind yourself to lengthen out the back of the neck. Tucking the tailbone. Rotating, really letting the knees drop open now. Feeling what happens here as you rotate through the lower thoracic spine, as you rotate through the lower ribs and the diaphragm. Maybe pausing even and breathing into the rotation, whatever feels just right in your body. And if you find yourself really efforting, let go of the effort and just sustain compression. Maintain deep pressure at a point of sensation, taking some deep breaths. Letting go of any muscular effort so that gravity and time become the drivers to soften and release a little bit more. And now we're progressing off of the ribs. And you'll find yourself right in the upper lumbar spine, so the top of the arching part or lordotic part of the back. Notice now how it feels to tuck the pelvis and lengthen, and then to arch. Breathing deeply, using the pelvis to increase the weight bearing or increase the compression between the body and balls. Decompressing the spine here, creating length in every segment of the spine, restoring all three planes of movement. As you find a spot of sensation, maintain a little pressure here now and note what happens as you rotate. You'll really start to drop into those meaty spinal extensors now here, where you may have them held tight or locked in extension. So maybe you decide to let the knees stay to one side. Take a few deep breaths. And then try the other way. And then notice what happens when you bend to one side here. Bend to the other side. Use this freedom to explore, to listen to the sensations of the body, and to respond intelligently to what it's asking for. Continue to work your way down. Now you're right in the low back. And you might even find that it lifts up the tailbone a little bit, and you can get a little chug up and down on a couple segments. That might feel right, or that pelvic tilt might continue to feel good. Exploring all three planes, knowing none is better than the other. The most important thing is to listen. Rotating. Breathing deeply. Allowing for continued unwinding of the whole spine. Noticing how the sensations, how the rhythm is changing as you move down. Now you're right at the base of the spine, right where the lumbar spine and the pelvis meet. So your lumbosacral junction. Get a little arch and round over here. And then notice what it feels like to rotate. Right on the last vertebrae, feeling the pelvis go one way and then the lumbar spine being blocked in the other direction by the therapy ball. Encouraging normal diagonal movement that happens during walking with every step. And seeing what it feels like to side bend, open one side and close the other. And when you're ready, using your hands, taking the therapy balls now right onto the sacrum. The sacrum is the triangular bone at the back of the pelvis. 5 fused vertebrae that creates the back wall of the pelvis and is part of the sacroiliac joint where the pelvis turns into the lower extremity. So it's where the lower extremity meets the axial skeleton or the spine. And now here, let's focus on just doing some pelvic mobility. Hands right on those front hip bones, the ASIS, tip the pelvis forward, tip the pelvis back. Tip the pelvis forward. Tip the pelvis back. You should be right in those dimples at the base of the spine, on the sacrum. If you're smaller, the standard size therapy balls might be better than the plus balls here. And then find stillness. And here we're going to use the legs as a driver for the last part of the spinal progression. You're going to hug one knee into your chest because and now we'll use our legs for this last part of the spinal mobilization. You're going to hug one knee to the chest. And then after you hug that leg in, you can straighten the other one out as far as it's comfortable. If your leg's hanging in the air, bend it again. Make sure that the whole foot is touching the ground so that there's a point of contact. And this is encouraging diagonal movement in the sacrum, which is necessary during walking, during normal gait patterns. Hold for about 5 breaths. And then slowly bends the straightened leg, sliding it back up using as little musculature as possible. Let the bent knee come down, switching sides. Bend the opposite knee, hug it into your chest, anchor it there, and now walk the other foot out, keeping your foot attached to the ground at all times, coming towards your heel, pressing through the heel if it's available. One knee pulls up, one reaches down, getting movement in opposite directions, encouraging diagonal movement of the sacrum. Hold for 5 deep breaths. And then take your bent knee and then take your straightened knee, start to slide it up, bringing both knees to meet each other, hugging your knees to your chest, getting a little sacral decompression now, maybe even a little sacral rock if it feels good. Decompressing the lumbosacral junction, creating space where the lumbar spine and the pelvis meet. Take a few deep breaths here. And then release one leg, release the other, remove your therapy balls, and lie completely on your back, letting the entire spine now sink into the surface, letting your entire spine rest into the floor.